All right, what's up guys? Well, today I want to talk a little bit about the Active 2.3 and the wall-mounted pressure washer setup as a whole, sort of like a one-year review. So it was about a year ago where I did the garage overhaul, we did the drywall repair and paint, lighting, tool carts, and detailing cabinets, Swiss Trax flooring, and then again, as the subject of today's video, wall-mounted pressure washer with the Active 2.3. So over time, I've gotten a bunch of questions and comments on the setup and the pressure washer, so I thought kind of do like a follow-up. It's been a solid year now of using this and the whole setup. And so I kind of have some additional, I don't know, sort of thoughts and things to chime in there aside from the initial impressions video that I did. And by the way, I did do a sort of initial demo and review of the Active 2.3 and then a whole installation video of the wall-mounted setup. So if you're interested, check those videos out. Now with the pressure washer, let's just get it out of the way. Actually, before we get it out of the way, address the number one thing. I thought it was kind of cool. The guys from Active who make this pressure washer did a video a couple of months ago where they took 5 different, wall-mounted or cart-style builds and then sort of, featured them in a video and talked through them and things like that. And mine was one of the ones that they featured, which I thought was pretty cool. I think they were trying to find like commonalities amongst all these setups because I think they want to offer like an all-in-one solution beyond just a pressure washer with an integrated hose reel. But yeah, that was pretty cool. The one thing that I did find amusing with this, with their comments on my setup, was they thought that I color matched everything to my car because I got the Yasmarina Blue M3. No, actually, the piping system I went with was the Rapid Air Fast Pipe and the CR spotless tanks, which were only available in blue. So you could get the hose reel and the hose in like gray and black, I think were the only other colors. But no, I was really just trying to match the piping and the CR tanks, not the car. It just kind of worked out that way. But anyway, thought that was funny. All right, so pressure washer. Again, first thing to address here is the volume, the noise, how loud this thing is. So here's what I'm gonna say about that. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit at the time, but now over a year. So objectively, this is a loud pressure washer, louder than probably other things in its class. And I say probably because, and I think this is an important disclaimer, so I am not a pressure washer review type channel. I don't buy different units and test them out and review them and all that other kind of stuff. I really just had, I had a Karcher 1800 is what I started with, had that for a couple of years, and then when it became apparent that I was really getting into detailing and everything and I wanted to step up to a more prosumer line of pressure washer, I went with this one. So I'm not a reviewer of that kind, not really my thing, but from everything I've seen and my own experience with this, yes, it is a louder pressure washer, presumably, and I think I might have even done this, the decibel meter test, although I think I use my phone, not like a professional device, but a lot of people have done that. So objectively, it is a louder unit, but here's where you get into the more subjective range is how much louder is it than the next loudest unit in the price point, right? So this is like a $650 machine. I guess maybe the next one that's close to it is maybe like an AR Blue Clean or something like that. I'm sure there's probably others in that $600 to $700 range, but how much louder is it really than the next loudest unit? And is that difference in noise really that much of a contributing factor to your decision making? Maybe. If you're really sensitive to sound, then, yeah, you might want to take that into consideration. Personally, I really don't think it's that loud. Now, my wife, on the other hand, is asking me to buy a Kranzla at this point. So, I mean, that's a convenient excuse to be able to buy a Kranzla, which may happen sometime in the future. But for right now, yes, it is louder to some people. But for me, and in my case, everybody's case is going to be a little bit different. Like for me, I wash my car outside. I have this thing mounted in the garage, obviously, and I wash my car outside. I have like a turn driveway, so the driveway kind of goes around the corner a little bit. And honestly, I don't even hear this thing over the sound of like the water coming out of the gun. That if you have a cart set up or if you physically take the unit outside, I don't know. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. When I first tested it, I had it outside and I didn't think it was that loud. However, if you have the unit inside, wall mounted or on a cart or on the floor, whatever it is, and you are fortunate enough to be able to wash your car in your garage, like if you've got like a drain set up or something like that, it's probably going to be loud. I would imagine that most units are going to be loud, but this one in particular, yes, it will be loud. 100% of the time that I'm washing my car, I have like AirPods in or headphones or something like that, noise canceling, so I don't notice anyway. But for anybody who is doing something inside with this thing, it is a loud unit, and I'm sure on top of that, the reverberating in the garage is gonna make it even louder. So objectively, on the numbers, by the numbers, it is a louder unit. I don't think it is so loud that it is a turnoff, but that's a highly subjective opinion, and not everybody is going to agree with that. So that really is the main thing when it comes to the noise of this. Performance-wise, I think this thing is fantastic. Never had an issue with it, been running it for a year. And it's solid as it can be, right? So this thing, and again, I covered this in the initial video, but like, you know, this thing, it comes with a cage. It's actually kind of cool looking, like industrial cage. It looks very industrial. You can mount that to the wall. One other thing that the guys from Active commented on the video was, because I had this on a shelf, I think they might have asked or commented that like, oh, you know, that you could have just mounted that to the wall. Yes, I know. The cage that they provide with this thing does have 2 mounting holes that are exactly 16 inches apart, so it'll work great right in the studs. I could have mounted the cage to the wall, purposely chose not to. I don't know, I know I could have, but I kind of like the hose slightly tucked under the shelf. And another thing is that if I ever wanted to change the unit out, I didn't want to be committed to having the cage stuck to the wall, right? So with it on a shelf, if I ever did want to sub this out, I can, and I'm not committed to that. But if you wanted to, yes, you could just mount the cage directly to the wall. In terms of, you know, adding to any of the noise, you know, some people suggested that it might have been like the vibrating on the shelf. The cage that it comes in and the unit itself has rubber padding under it. It kind of acts as like a damper. So I don't think that's the problem. I don't get the sense that this thing rattles. It's just the sound of the induction motor that has the volume to it. And on that note, by the way, I would say I don't think any pressure washer is particularly pleasant to listen to, but I would say that the tone of this thing is worlds better than at least what I was coming from. Now, I don't know if that's a fair, you know, sort of comparison, because the price difference between what I had and what this is like wildly different. But the Karcher 1800 that I had, and even the Active 2.0, even though I never owned an Active 2.0, I've seen many videos of people using them. And the sound of it, like it's that spin up sound, and then when you're done using it, when you let go of the trigger, it kind of winds down. It's a very high pitched kind of whine. Absolutely hate the sound of that. This is a much deeper, and again, it's that sort of industrial, sort of induction motory, whatever is going on under there, but it is a deeper sort of tone, and I think it's way more pleasing than that high pitched whine. So if you have this, I would imagine that unless you're, again, super sensitive to sound, you're probably not all that unhappy with it. And if you are shopping for a prosumer grade pressure washer, I still think this is definitely one to consider depending on what your price point is. The only other things I would say in terms of this thing is that, you know, I do think it would have been cool if Active had offered just the standalone unit, that because this is again, as they call it, a prosumer level machine, especially in that $650 range, I do think it would have been cool to offer this as a standalone unit, because I think that most people who are probably going to be in the market for something like this may have already upgraded. And I'll talk a little bit about accessories in terms of the whole, you know, experience with the wall-mounted setup. But I think most people would have something like an upgraded hose or you know, an aftermarket pressure washer gun and stuff like that. With this, you get a really nice 40-foot steel braided hose. And by the way, I've seen some people say that like, oh, you have to use a steel braided hose for this thing to work. Not true. This is a 75-foot Cobra Jet hose and it works flawlessly. In fact, when I did the initial test, I had a 50-foot, I fix it, whatever. I don't know, it was an Amazon hose. That worked fine too. So Active does recommend that you use a steel braided hose, but by no means do you have to. It'll work just fine, again, with something like a Cobra Jet hose, but even this is like sort of a premium quality hose, but it works just great. But yeah, anyway, so even though the steel braided hose that they give you is nice, you get like the pressure washer gun with the integrated lance, which I absolutely hate. I hate having that like fixed thing. It'd be cool if they could be separate. But in any case, overall, I think it'd be cool if you could just get the unit, maybe save a little bit of money. Like I said, this thing is $650. You get all the stuff with it. Maybe you could sell the standalone unit for just $550 or something. They also do include a foam cannon. I don't know if it's that great, but like at least it's better than nothing. You get the nozzles with it. And then the one other cool thing I thought that was cool that they added was an orifice, a 1.4 5 millimeter orifice if you have an aftermarket foam cannon, so that you could upgrade the orifice to make sure to keep this thing running at under 15 amps. And that's another thing that I think is worth pointing out too. When you talk about, the volume of this thing and other units in its class and stuff, and I did mention the AR Blue Clean as something that might be in the same arena in terms of price as this, but one of the things that you have to take into consideration is that with something like an AR Blue Clean, I believe that requires a dedicated 20 amp circuit, whereas this will work on a typical residential garage, 15 amp circuit. Now in this garage, before I upgraded it, I only had one 15 amp accessible outlet in the back that was being shared with some stuff in the room behind it, and then of course the two on the ceiling for the garage door openers. But once I had it renovated, I had 4 more outlets put in, both on separate 20 amp circuits. So certainly do have the power to run it, but if you are working in, like the way my garage was, this could still work fine on that kind of a power. So again, you have to take those kind of things into consideration, where you might step it up a little bit and the machine might be slightly quieter, but now your power requirements might be a little bit different. So like all those things, you might want to take into consideration. But again, I do think it was cool that they added at least the orifice for that. And the nozzles that they provide are 4.6 millimeters. So that again will, you want to make sure that relative to your machine that you're using the right size orifice to keep that power level down. So anyway, overall, still really happy with the machine. And if you can get past the slight uptick in volume from the next loudest machine, I still think it's a good buy. Okay, so now the wall-mounted system as a whole, there is not a single negative thing to say about having done a wall-mounted system. Seriously. Other than maybe the expense. And at that, there's a huge range of different components that you can buy that can make this, you could do a budget build, or you could just go all out crazy, whatever it is. This, or even a cart build, I can't think of a single bad thing to comment on this after a year, after immediately or after a year. And really there's two things that I think make any of these things worthwhile, right? One of them is just the hose reel. So before having this, trying to wind up a 50, 75 foot hose by hand, kind of a pain. And then just having everything connected, right? And again, that applies to if you do a wall mounted or a cart setup, but the connectivity and just being able to wound everything up really quick just makes setup and tear down a breeze. And that alone is worth it. Again, if you really get into the whole detailing thing, if you wash a lot of cars or just wash your car frequently, I cannot see a negative thing to doing that. Putting the system together, definitely a little bit of a project, but really putting this together, I didn't find to be that much of a hassle. It really wasn't that bad. And again, check out the install video if you want to see, kind of get an idea of what's involved in that. But yeah, man, not a single bad thing to say about having done this setup. Now, in terms of the actual components, a couple of things. One, I went with the Rapid Air, or the Rapid Air Fast Pipe. Rapid Air is the company, Fast Pipe is this particular model. They sell a few different pipe setups, and I'm pretty sure this one is for compressed air, but it can be adapted for water. And by adapted, I mean you do nothing, you just run water through it. It's aluminum piping, strong plastic fittings. It all fits together really, really well. And actually, I would have gone with the Prevost setup that Obsessed Garage sells, but at the time that I finally was ready to pull the trigger on it, it was on back order. And I waited a little while for it, hadn't come in, I got a little impatient. I started looking around for other options, and I happened to come across this one, which was a kit that was adapted from the stuff that Rapid Air sells, and it was a company called Clean Garage that sort of assembled this kit and started selling it as a kit. Now mine was a little bit of a custom build, so in addition to what they give you, which is fine if you're doing like a very standard type installation, they had theirs laid out a little bit differently than what this is, and I didn't love that version. So I ended up buying a couple of extra parts and fittings, and I also adapted. I took this from, there's a YouTuber who goes by, I think, Snareman, who did a similar setup with the bucket fill attached to this. So I took that idea, integrated that, and it was 100% worth doing. So I've seen some of the things asked, like, well, do you have to use this? Was this just for aesthetics to use something like, the Rapid Air setup or the Prevost setup? The Prevost setup, by the way, is probably a more, premium style. It's about twice as much as the Rapid Air setup was. The difference being that all the fittings are aluminum and the pipe is 1 inch versus this, which is 3/4 inch. Now, does that make a huge difference in terms of overall water flow? I probably not, because it all terminates to a 5/8 inch hose. So I don't think so, but I don't know. I've never tested it. I've never done like a a flow rate where you spray the water in the bucket for a minute and measure the actual GPM or test the PSI or even the voltage or anything like that, or the amperage for it. Haven't done any of that, but the performance of everything, I have no complaints about whatsoever. But again, back to the question of, was this for aesthetics? I mean, it looks better than PEX, I think. But like, could you do this whole setup with PEX piping? You could do it with anything that can carry water. So PEX, copper if you're feeling industrial, I don't know. But again, anything that carries water that you can connect a couple of valves to and have fittings for, sure. But at a little over $300 for the kit plus what I had to add for it, I mean, I don't think it was a bad investment at all. If I had to do it over again, I would have no problem with using this. I would probably try the Prevost one just because why not? But still, for this kit, it all worked great and I've not had any issues with it. So still really happy with all of that. The DI system, integrating that, I still think that was worth it. One of the frequent questions I've gotten on this was how much of the resin have I gone through? These are still the original carts. So I've had this again for a year now. I use the carts in the DI water very, very sparingly, right? So the only time that I use DI water is if I'm in direct sun and if it's the final rinse. So like I'll just use a regular unfiltered water for like the majority of the car wash. But if I happen to be in direct sun, then for the final rinse, I'll use the DI tanks to make sure that it doesn't dry and leave water spots, obviously, is the whole point of it. So for that, I'm still on the original. And if this thing is reading correctly, it still says that the TDS rate is 0. So for as far as I can tell, it seems to be working. It works like magic if you actually have this and if it is a really sunny day, a really hot day, and it dries on your car quickly, it's amazing how well the resin works. So if you live in a hard water area, it is worth the investment. A lot of people will, instead of using the carts, they'll just use the loosely packed stuff, like they'll pack it themselves. They'll just get the loose resin instead of using the carts, because the carts are expensive. I mean, I think they're like 140 bucks a pair to replace, or 150, whatever it is, but they are pricey. So I definitely try to be on the frugal side with them. And again, only use them in direct sunlight on the final rinse. But there's a bunch of different options. You don't have to go with the CR Spotless, obviously. And they themselves make a couple of different size kits. And then there are a few other companies out there, but this is just the one that I'd heard a lot about when I was putting the system together. So it is the one that I went with, and it works great. Love it. I love it when I have to use it, put it that way. Okay, what else? So let's talk about the hose real quick. Again, this is a Cobra Jet 75-foot hose. I don't know, man. I don't know that I would go any more than 75. I had tried 100-foot when I had the Karcher 1800, and there was noticeable pressure loss there. And I read that in a lot of cases, people notice at about 100 feet, you start seeing a little bit of loss of pressure. I don't know if that would be the case with a better machine like the Active or something else like a Blue Clean or a Kranzler or whatever. But I think that for most people, and me included, 75 feet is more than enough hose. Again, I have a turn driveway, so I kind of go around the corner, and with 75 feet, I have more than enough room to pull that out, get behind the car, and everything like that. So I don't think you can go wrong there. And finally, let's talk about some of the accessories, some of the add-ons and things like that, if you are doing a wall-mounted setup, and things that I think just make, the whole build a little bit more complete, right? So beyond this, actually one other thing I would add, only because I added the bucket fill hose here on the side, I did grab this little clamp here. So one of the things that was kind of freaking me out a little bit is that whenever I would, pull the hose even just a little bit, this would rotate. So even though this, pipe is solidly in the fittings, it could still spin a little bit. And even though that wasn't causing a problem, it wasn't leaking or anything like that, still kind of freaked me out a little bit that it could do that. So I got this like clamp that just, hooks up into the wall here, and it kind of goes around the edge of the end of the hose. So it just provides a little bit more stability. I can't imagine that's going to be really useful to a whole lot of people out there without, some very specific, type build or whatever. But if you have long lengths of pipe that you run, or in this case, like the bucket fill setup, good thing to consider just for that extra little bit of stability. And again, everything I'm talking about here, all the parts, all the accessories, everything, I have linked in the Google Doc. Check it out in the description. If you just want to, research a little bit of some of the components and stuff like that, everything is listed there, along with a couple of notes, things that you might want to know about them. But accessory-wise, some of the things that I've added since then that I think complements the build. First is the mounts for the foam cannons, right? So do you really need those? No, you could just sit your foam cannons on a counter or something like that. I don't know, I just think it kind of adds a little bit to the setup. It's place for everything and everything in its place, I guess. But I love them. They're very high quality, and I like how they just kind of keep the foam cannons where they need to be. Another thing is the lance holder. When I got this one, this was the only option. It was a slightly shorter option, one that you could only get from Obsessed Garage that was just the right length to hold everything, though they do sell one now that it's the holder for the wand, for the lance, but then it's got a little separate thing on the side for the gun. If I was gonna do this over again, I probably would get that one just because, and this is nitpicking, but whatever. Just because, you know, I attach the gun to the lance, but I almost never use the lance unless I'm washing like my wife's SUV or something like that. It's just something that like I never use. So to have the little thing on the side, it's just a cool little extra. But either way, just having a place to put the gun and the lance, good stuff. And also the amount for the ego blower. So if you use a leaf blower, and most people who use a leaf blower have the ego blower, it's something that I'm always using every time I wash my car. So having it nearby, having it mounted on the wall with everything else, I kind of like the idea of that. And I don't think that Ego actually sells a mount. I think your only options are people who like 3D print them and sell them on Amazon or eBay or whatever, or Etsy. This one I did pick up on Amazon, and again, it is linked in that Google Doc if you want to check it out. But I like this one because it's reversible, right? So if you have, like I have the 530, which is I think the lower end model of the Ego blower, but if you have the, like, and that has one mount, or if you have the 650, the 765, or now the 800 series, the mount's a little bit different. So for this one, you can flip upside down depending on which one you have. And one last thing, accessory related, but not quite wall mounted related, is the nozzle tip holder. I try to mention this whenever possible because I just love this thing. Michael from Mad Car Care makes these. These things are awesome. It's just a great little contraption to have on your spray gun if you switch back and forth between your nozzle and a foam cannon. It's just somewhere to put that so it's not like on the ground or in your pocket or anything like that. All right, guys, well, I think that is everything that I wanted to cover, everything I wanted to note after a year of use, of constant use. Just flawless performance out of this entire setup, out of the machine, all of the components. I could not be happier with it. Like I said, if you do a lot of detailing, if you are a car washing enthusiast, a detailing enthusiast, there's just no downside to doing a wall-mounted setup or a cart setup. They both will just that constant setup and tear down. It makes it all worthwhile. So definitely something worth considering. And as for the unit itself, again, no complaints. I do officially have the authorization to get the Kranzla, which I might do at some point, but for right now, I got no complaints with the Active 2.3. And like I said, if you're super sensitive to sound, then it's maybe something that you want to, consider or try to hear one in person, because again, you just can't really get, I think, a solid enough impression from video, but no problems with it. I am not bothered by the uptick in volume. I can't imagine it's that much worse than the next worst one. So, I don't know. But again, that is subjective, so definitely do your own research. But again, I have everything linked in the Google Doc in the description below, and if there's anything that I missed, anything that you still have any kind of questions on or anything like that, feel free to comment below. I will definitely get to them. But in the meantime, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.